or I guess the borrowing journey, whatever you may call that. So we are going to welcome our second session. Now, the fintech industry is evolving rapidly, and the investment plays a crucial role in shaping its future. In this session, we'll explore where the smart money is going and how investments are fueling innovation. Let's meet the leaders who are shaping the future of Australian Fintech. So I'm going to hand it over to Andrew, who's our moderator today, and he'll be introducing all the panellists. So I'll let you take it away.
Thanks very much. Welcome everyone to the session today. My name's Andrew Cornell. I'm the banking and finance and sort of fintech editor at Capital Brief, which I'm sure you're all subscribers to, given that we're a startup and we need all your support. We've been going a year now, and our brief is politics, economics and business, and particularly the new economy. So I've spent, sadly, right from pre-internet days, I've been covering banking, so the last 10 years have been particularly fascinating for me with fintech. So it's a great pleasure to be here with you today, and also to have a fantastic panel. Now, I know, being at a startup myself, no one's interested in money and raising money and things, so it's good to see so many of you came anyway. But it's a fantastic panel to cover all aspects of investing in fintechs. I'll just very briefly, because it's a short session, Lisa Tay is the lead account manager, SME and growth at Airwallex, with a background from Uber, HSBC and McKinsey, so the full sort of suite there. Simon Costello in the middle, CEO and co-founder of Frankie One, which specialises in RegTech, and you're an investment banker by background, so again, an interesting perspective there. And Lucy Tan, who is an investor at Square Peg now, so right in the centre. Look, I thought I might get each of you to do a little brief introductory sort of positioning on where you are and where you're seeing things, but I wonder if you could sort of cover in that. There has been so much discussion of a fintech winter now, probably stretching back 2 years. Some signs from some people that we're seeing some shift there, optimistic signs, but if you could just give us your perspective on where you are at the moment and what you're seeing, and maybe we start here. Yeah.
Thanks Andrew. Hi everyone, my name is Lisa, and as Andrew mentioned, I'm head of account management at Airwallex. And for those of you who don't know Airwallex, we are one of the 9 Australian unicorns, born and bred right here in the great city of Melbourne. And our mission is to empower companies to grow beyond borders and also to streamline financial operations in an all-in-one platform. So speaking about topic we mentioned, I think when we talk about fueling fintechs and investing in startups and fintechs, we often think about cap raise, how can we inject more money? But what we're seeing with a lot of the companies that we're working with is how are they making the hard-earned or hard-raised capital work for itself? So we work with all stages of companies, from startups to large enterprises, and really thinking about how you can make your runway and your burn rate last longer, and that's through streamlining financial operations. As a startup founder, you often have to wear multiple hats, right? Your priority is building the next product, getting your first customer, your second customer, hiring the best talent. You have to do so many things. And often when it comes to financial operations, it's not necessarily top of mind. And you might need to wait a few years until you've grown to a certain stage of your company and you're able to hire a CFO or hire someone who is an expert in this area to help you manage your finances. So what we're seeing at Airwallex is a lot of companies, early stage companies, are coming to us and asking for guidance and support on how they can better manage their finances. So that's what we are here to do, is to help early stage companies to provide advice on how to make your money work for itself through investing in the right return-bearing savings accounts, or also to how to better manage your employee expenses, etc. We know that based on our current survey, 92% of startup founders really find it challenging when it comes to financial operations. So I guess to your point, what we're seeing is people are struggling because it's harder to raise money, it's harder to make your money last for itself. That's why it's even more critical to understand how to manage your finances and working with the right partner to do so.
And look, I just should add that tomorrow, I think, the latest Airwallex startup report is available via the app for Intersekt. So just look on the app and you'll be able to download that Airwallex report tomorrow.
Super. So, yeah, hi everybody. My name's Simon. I run Frankie One, and for context, we raised about $50 million from VCs both here in Australia and abroad. If the question was around about how do you see the landscape in the market at the moment, I think it'd be no surprise to everybody here. Obviously, a couple of years ago, lower interest rates, very different environment. But if you're asking about how it's now, how it is now, I would still say the valuations have definitely changed, but as far as if you've got a good business, you've got great metrics and the like, I would say there's still opportunity out there. It's a little bit harder from like a valuation standpoint. Well, that's what we've sort of found from our side. We raised what we called our Series A Plus about a couple of years ago. We'll be looking probably to go back into the market probably next year, maybe the year after, and we'll have a probably better understanding. But I think sort of Lucy's in the thick of it, so she'll probably give more context.
Yeah, it's interesting times being a fintech investor at the moment. I won't dress it up with rainbows and lollipops or anything. I think when you definitely compare to sort of the exuberance of 2021, there was a massive funding crash, not just for fintech to be fair, but it's definitely affected fintech rather acutely in sort of the 2022, 2023 years. What we're seeing now, though, is actually a pick back up in activity, at least year to date. Have seen a lot of sort of treasury management, cash management startups pop up all across the world. There's been some really strong contenders in Australia, and I think Airwallex, you guys have a great treasury product option now as well. Just never really that relevant in the zero interest rate era, but now if you can make 5% on your cash, people are interested in how do you manage that and how do you optimize that. Also seeing, I would say, kind of to your point, Simon, that if you are a fintech that just kept your head down, focused on good unit economics, kept building in those 2022, 2023 years, and just really solid business model, now you're able to come out of the woodwork and go to investors that are, I think, more attuned to hunting when everyone else is scared. So when I talk to US generalist VCs, a lot of them have pivoted their entire teams to just focus on AI. But then when you talk to the fintech specialists, they're like, while everyone's looking over there, we're now very keenly hunting in the fintech area because you are going to get more sensible valuations, you're going to get higher quality businesses, less noise. When things are exuberant, honestly, the noise to signal ratio was just so high. So I'm actually really excited to be investing at this time.
And can I just follow up on that AI, obviously, as you say, it's a huge amount of hype, and we've seen waves. There was even a RegTech, bit of RegTech hype a few years ago as well. How do you look through that? Because obviously there is going to be some genuine breakthroughs and some fintechs or some startups you might want to be on board with AI, and yet you're seeing real world problems like cash management. So how are you filtering between this one's got a huge amount of blue sky, this one looks pretty boring, but it might deliver better earnings, cash returns?
Yeah, I think, we look at every investment sort of on its own merits. It's never sort of like, hey, should we be allocating 80% of our portfolio to AI right now and only 20% to fintech? It's just exceptional founders are so rare in our job that once you find one, it kind of comes down to the founder first, and then whatever they're building, we'll just have to understand, hey, is there an investment case to become a unicorn? We would still invest in Jack at Airwallex if we met him today because he is incredible. And so, yeah, look, I think the thing that's most tricky with AI right now is that signal to sort of noise to signal ratio. You just see crazy stats, like businesses in 6 months being able to reach $10 to $30 million in revenue. And you're just we've never seen that pace before. But the biggest issue there is that what is the quality of that revenue, right? There's a lot of experimental budget in corporates being thrown at it at the moment. no one really knows whether that'll stick around or if it'll just disappear once they realize, oh, we're not able to extract the value that we were hoping to. So I think the struggle for us as investors is with AI is actually, it's a lot harder than investing in fintech at the moment, because you have to kind of see through a lot of the noise. Whereas in fintech, if I come across an accounts payable business that's doing 4x in revenue and has a really solid customer base, a really clear go-to-market distribution path, I know how to assess that business like the back of my hand. This is a new world for me right now.
May I ask what businesses are making 10 to 30 million ARR in 6 months?
It is insane. It's like anything under the sun, right? It's like, hey, patient notes taking for doctors. It's just like some of that, the product-led growth is just, yeah. and that's like one example. Then you've got just like generic enterprise search products. It's like you go to a big corporate and you say, hey, all those docs that are in SharePoint and people don't even know where to go, you dump it into our LLM and we'll surface it, and you ask like an open-ended question. But it's like, you know, who's really providing the value there? Is it the startup or is it OpenAI? That's kind of the questions we have to ask ourselves.
It strikes me that would be particularly relevant for you, Simon, because one of the areas we know the banks are interested, and insurance companies, is regulatory compliance. How do they provide, legal advice if they're doing financial advice? These are all reg tech sort of, sweet spot areas, and yet AI potentially could transform that.
Look, good point. We have almost 60% of the Australian population now runs through Frankie One, and if you're not familiar, we do KYC, AML, and fraud solutions. We're an aggregator, so we're bringing in hundreds and hundreds of different tools around the world, connecting into our platform. We walk into our customers, which are from the major banks, the major crypto companies, major fintechs here in Australia and abroad. We offer them a single API, and they can select which services they like to use. To your point, we obviously have a huge amount of data that runs through the company, and there is huge potential from an AI perspective. Definitely AI gets thrown around. Very, very exciting what the potential we're doing. From Frankie One's perspective, for the last 2.5 years, we've actually been rebuilding our tech stack. We have very structured data. We're actually very fortunate that AI has sort of come into where it is at the moment. And now we have an LLM that sits in front that you can actually interact in a natural language, can actually interrogate. And whether you're a compliance officer, a fraud officer, or even a product manager, when you've got huge amount of data, it's sometimes confusing. And so, yes, I would say it is extremely powerful. And now we can do really cool things, and you can actually work out, hypothetically, your CBA, and you want to see how you are performing against all the other tier 1 banks. You can actually start working out, you can ask questions like, hey, what's my benchmarking? How am I doing from a fraud perspective? What am I doing from a onboarding and conversion rate perspective against my peers, both locally, internationally, etc. This is what I think AI has enabled you to get access to some of those different pieces in a very easy and accessible way.
And Lisa, from your work with startups, you're coming from sort of the opposite perspective to Lucy. So how are you, whether it's AI, whether it's other areas, how are you getting these startups to sort of communicate the signal rather than just the noise, or be sucked in by the noise?
Yeah, great question. I guess, on the topic of AI and how Airwallex is using it in our day-to-day as well, there's obviously this end of the spectrum, very blue sky, crazy, stuff. But then there's also lots of applications that we're embedding to our day-to-day, whether it's in the frontline sales, leveraging AI tools to make our customer outreach more efficient, or when we are doing every single of our product that we're building, we now have a new team that we've hired that's specifically trying to put AI applications in every single one of our products. So when you're using our expense management tool, rather than having to input everything, that will all automatically be integrated into the web app directly without trying to minimize human touch. So there's so many applications that could be used in every single touch point, whether it's internally in our business or customer facing in the products that we build. So I think that's just a new norm. We're embedding that in everywhere we go. Customers in this aspect. What we do day to day with the customers is very much still trying to help them make their lives easier. As we mentioned, for startups, there's a million things on the top of your mind, and often, how you manage your budget and expenses is probably number 271 on your to-do list. So our job is to try to make founders' life easier, and also to achieve cost savings. I think Airwallex has been in a very, very humbling position to get to where we are today in the last 9 years. Jack and our founders, know what it's like to build a company and how hard it is. So, we're investing a lot back into the community. So we launched the Airwallex for Startups program earlier this year. For any startup who has joined the program, they get free FX for your next cap raise. You get payments acceptance rebates. You get free employee cards for all the founders. And we've also built a great ecosystem with a lot of partners here today, including Upcover Insurance, Cake Equity, to help founders, once from day one, be set up for success in the best way possible. So we're, different to Lucy, where we're injecting capital. We're trying to invest in startups in a different way as well, and trying to help them minimize a lot of the distraction and noise so they can focus on what really matters, and that's building the product and growing their customer base.
Thanks very much. Now, it is a short session, and I don't want to dominate with my questions. Anyone just has a question, just make sure you wave. There's no high-tech sort of question recognition system here, so if there's anyone that had one at the moment, waving. I might then just go on to a couple of things that we've sort of touched on here, and it is that the substance of what is making a business valuable for investors to look at it at the moment. Because one of the things that we've seen as the winter's sort of played out, much more emphasis on positive cash flow, much more emphasis on an earnings track, much more emphasis on when can we see the real world delivery and a potential IPO. Is that the way that you're looking at things, Lucy?
So SquarePeg invests at the seed and Series A and Series B stages, so it's at the very, very earliest stages of company building, which means trying to demand positive cash flow at that stage is basically, we don't do that. I think that's for more when you're maybe at your Series E or pre-IPO and you're preparing to become a publicly listed company, then you definitely want to be able to tell your public investors, your incoming public investors, that hey, we've got cash flow positive earnings, we've got sort of profitability. It's like a really, really solid business that can stand up in sort of the NASDAQ or the ASX. At where I play, what we tend to see as what we would invest behind is not even the metrics, to be honest with you. Like maybe a Series A, you're starting to see an inflection in your metrics and sort of like early green shoots of like, hey, we're getting product market fit, or we've got early customer love with this particular segment. And by Series B, sure, there should be some solid trajectory. But when you're a seed stage business, sometimes we've invested pre-product, sometimes we've invested pre-revenue. I think Airwallex, when we went in, was basically pre-revenue. And so at that stage, all I'm judging on is the founder and the market and what's your clarity of insight in terms of how you're going to attack that market. Because usually I think founders, like the benefit of startups is that you can find a wedge that maybe some of the incumbents are just not focusing on because it's their priority number 200. And if that wedge is something that enough of your customers care about and you do it 10x better, then you will be able to earn a right to build yourself into a bigger business. So that's what I look at. Founder mostly.
Just a quick follow-up there. I mean, I know this is a bit of a buzz theme at the moment, but this idea of founder mode against manager mode, does that have any meaning for you?
Yeah, it was a heavy topic of debate amongst our portfolio founders. You can guess where they all sided, obviously. You should actually answer this question because you are a founder. Okay, sure. So Paul Graham from Y Combinator wrote this article about founder mode, which is, even as your business gets bigger, you should still be the person that gets into the detail and, helps with all the critical decision making. Basically, act like I don't know, it's like a supercharged individual contributor even though you're still like a CEO of the business. I don't know if that's how you would articulate it, but I have my own views on it, but you go.
Maybe you can see two different views here. So to add to that, so Paul Graham, if you're not familiar, is like the godfather within startup world. Brian Chesky, which is the CEO of Airbnb, had currently given this fantastic talk and broadly spoke about this thing called founder mode versus manager mode. Founder mode is, as you can expect, this is the owner of the company. They've gone, they deeply and intricately know the business. And manager mode is more, let's say, we'll call it the professional CEO, not necessarily the founder, let's say very well attuned, might have previous experience, not the founder. And one of the aspects I think that both Brian and Paul Graham bring up is that as a founder, you get lots of advice, sometimes from your investors, sometimes external, and usually the advice is, and one of the examples are, hey, hire great people, let them do their thing, step back, and the business should go well. And there's also, you get lots of different advice as a founder from your board, from other areas, and you get sort of picked up as that one of the examples of the advice that you do get, sort of step back from the business. Whereas founder modes, you'll find that they don't necessarily step back immediately, they're very passionate, they're very hands-on. And they gave examples of what we called skip level reviews. So traditionally, you should speak to your, as a CEO, I speak to my executive team and we obviously have meetings and see how things are going. It's very common for a founder, when they want to know some information, they will just walk straight to that person, the engineer, the product manager, etc., and find out information. You could imagine that's quite intimidating as a CEO, all of a sudden appears at your desk and asking for information. That can be considered micromanagement. It can be used as different terminology and words, which is not helpful. And quite commonly you'll get, hey, you should sort of step back now. Your company's a little bit more mature. And the idea behind founder mode is actually maybe a little bit self-serving. These people do know the business intricately. It is a different way of managing, and maybe people that don't have necessarily the operational experience will give you guidance that a typical management book would give you. Whereas founder mode is not as well documented, but if you look at the Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg's, or some of the big seven, you'll find that their management style is extremely different to management mode, but also being quite successful. And hence there's different approaches.
I was going to say, I don't want to say that I disagree with founder mode because I actually think that it is what makes startups successful against an incumbent, right? Like if you think about, if you were to work at Westpac, for someone at level 10 in the business, if they saw something in the front line with a customer and they were like, hey, this problem needs to be fixed, they would not feel empowered probably to go to the Westpac CEO. They might not even have access. But when you have a founder at the helm of a business and that person cares about their customer, cares about their business more than anybody else, anyone in the business, and I saw it at Go1, which is an edtech startup that I work briefly at, any of us could go to the founder and be like, hey, I see this issue. It needs to be fixed for X, Y, Z reasons. And if the founder is a great founder, they will just cut through all the bullshit in the business and get it fixed. Now, that is an avenue that just doesn't exist in corporates, and I think it's very, very powerful for startups to hold on to that.
So it begs the question, Lisa, is Airwallex still in founder mode with Jack?
Great question.
Great question. I was actually going to throw the ball back to Simon and ask what mode he's in. I get messages directly from the CEO, 6 a.m., on a Friday morning, because I don't know where in the world he is. But I think to Lucy's point, it actually gives me direct access directly to the CEO. And what I see on the ground, what my team is dealing with, what we speak to the customers, I have direct feedback channels to the CEO. And it's actually great that we have that level of access, but also it's important for someone in that level to see what's happening on the ground. Given my previous experience working at Uber, I'm sure many people here also know the journey and history of Uber, starting from Travis to Dara, very, very different, clearly one founder mode and one manager mode. And I also believe it depends depends on what stage of the company you're in. Early stage when you're forming and storming, you need someone who is 100% switched on and completely obsessed and will do whatever it takes to get to that mission. And when you transition, often during post-IPO, you move into someone who has a more professional managerial experience who can balance different priorities across a massive company. So to your question, we are very much still in founder mode at the moment, but I do believe that's what it takes in the early stage of a company to really form and storm and get to results and be very outcome driven. And I don't think we would be able to get where we are today if we didn't have so much direct communication across the organization.
Now, look, we've probably got time for one critical question. If anyone wanted to finish our session for us. Down the back, yep.
What are you each most excited about in the fintech space in the coming years? Things you've seen, read through, or things you're doing in your own businesses?
So one exciting thing that you've seen in the fintech space from each of you, and that'll take us out.
Well, I would say something I would hope to see more, and we were talking about this before we got on the stage, is I think it's in Australian Fintech, B2B is still very much leading the way, and I would love to see a better environment for more B2C fintech companies because there's definitely more room for innovation and disruption in that space.
It may be super overhyped at the moment, but AI has, I believe, certainly for our business and then for others, has a huge impact on the way that we interact with financial services, certainly in our company, but we are making material changes internally, and all interaction will be through AI and have an LLM sitting on the top. So I think it will be night and day difference for any Frankie One customers, but I imagine that will be the same with many different fintechs.
I think to build on Simon's points, what I'm interested to see is basically just AI native fintechs come onto the scene and really reimagine all these systems of records that the CFOs and finance teams have to deal with today, where it's just like kind of this dumb static thing that you input data into and extract data out of. Like, what does that look like in a world where you can basically have systems of prediction and action? So data gets sort of interpreted, and then you have agents that can then carry out the action. I mean, it all sounds super sci-fi, but it's like, the pace of progress is just so insane that it's not unheard of to maybe see this in the next 2 to 3 years.
Well, it's good to finish on some exciting vision for the future. So thanks very much to our panel. Thanks for you all to attending today. I'm sure you got something out of that today. So thanks again, everyone.
Thanks so much, guys. You can just...